Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again from Film Fanatic headquarters. It is Thursday morning at about 9:56. So I hope everyone's doing good. So yeah, it's Thursday. It's pretty warm again. It's unusually warm. I guess we might get some snow at some point this weekend, but we'll see. So hope everyone's doing good. Lately, what I've been up to is I've been doing lots of recording, so it's been a lot of fun. I play in a band that's a blast, and it's super fun, and it's always a fun challenge. A band called Bone Broth, and we are like pretty much an all improvised kind of project. We kind of just basically wing it, and it's everything is usually by the seat of our pants, and it's all improvised, and everybody in the band has like different backgrounds, so it comes from lots of different musical backgrounds, and they're great friends, and it's been a real fun journey with that with Bone Broth. And so right now we're in the midst of we've been working on. I think this is the first or almost the second week of recording. But lately we've been recording and working on this studio album for the last week, and we have two more sessions to go, and and then we'll go from there. Yesterday, or last night, we've been recording since New Year's Eve, and then we started on New Year's Eve, and it's Thursday, so we've been going since then, more or less. And we had a big kind of listening gathering yesterday. We just sat. We didn't do any recording, but we sat and just listened through, a lot of the music that we recorded. We got quite a bit of material recorded, so it was good to just listen back to it and kind of somewhat organize it and cut some of the things that we don't think were so exciting, and then trying to keep some of the things that we thought were exciting. And and then tonight we're gonna do some recording, and then Friday. So pretty excited. And we also have a show coming up this weekend at the just I think pretty much the best music venue around right now, called Hey Sailor. We're going to be playing there on Saturday at 7 o'clock. It was a last minute gig, so we'll be there with Bone Broth. So if you're around in the area, come on by. And on the following Saturday, a week from this coming Saturday, I have another show at Hey Sailor as well with my band Quantum. So come on by. It's going to be a gay dance party. So we played there one other time a few weeks ago, or at the beginning of December. But super cool, amazing venue. It's my favorite place right now, and it's just ideally it's got, I don't know, it's got everything that you want for a venue, and it's got great food and the whole thing. So if you're around in the area in the next 2 weeks, or these coming Saturdays, come on by. So today's show is going to be about, probably, I'd say, pound for pound, overall, my favorite modern day movie franchise. I've done lots of shows on Film Fanatic where I have talked about and done lots of videos around franchises that I really love. Where my favorite franchise of all time is the Friday 13th franchise. I did a big show where I did all of the movies involved in that amazing franchise. Covered all the movies and did a video for each one. That was a lot of fun. That was a learning experience too, because it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and I realized, to a degree, it's kind of ambitious because it's a lot of movies to cover, and I watched them all in order. I have the box set on Blu-ray, and it's a really awesome package. It's one of my favorite, one of my most prized possessions, if you will, as far as a collector. It's really awesome, tons of special features, and just really great. And so I did that and learned a lot, because it was a lot of movies and a lot of information to kind of cover, but it was super fun. That is my all-time favorite franchise. I did also a big series on the Psycho movies, which I didn't really think was a thing. I did the coverage. Never really thought of of the Psycho films, the first one being with directed by Alfred Hitchcock. I never thought of those as being a franchise, but there's actually about five movies in that franchise, and they're actually really good. So I did a coverage of that. I did a big show on the Evil Dead films by Sam Raimi, another favorite, franchise. I did also a coverage of the Halloween films, which I do really like and love a lot, but not for me. It's not as consistent as the Friday 13th series. Even the movies that are kind of outside of that universe or kind of spin-off movies, I think those are just incredible. Also, Halloween, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. Of course, the classics are my favorites, but I did pretty much all of those films. I also did a big show on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Again, pretty mixed, but there are certain films in the franchise that are obviously masterpieces. So covering franchises is, a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but again, it's something that I really love. And so today's show is going to be on the uh, the Purge franchise. I I have to say, like I said in the beginning of the show, that the Purge franchise is my favorite contemporary or modern franchise. It's probably, it's it's always hard to pick your favorites, to a degree, but I as far as this consistency, I really feel besides the Friday 13th series, I can watch all those movies right through. I have my favorites. I have certain films that obviously stand out, but overall, I think they're just awesome. And but with the Purge movies, the same thing can happen. I and in the case of the Purge franchise, I actually feel that each movie gets better. They're all really good, but I feel like each movie gets more and more exciting. There's a level of where it feels like the stakes are higher. The stories get a little bit more complicated. I love how there's always a really cool kind of social commentary laid out throughout all of the films. And it's never like heavy handed per se, it's never preachy, but it's very, very, I think the Purge films do such a great job of, in a lot of ways, not only are they great horror films, first and foremost, and, lots of action and it's very dark, but great characters. But I also feel that they do the franchise as a whole does such a great job, and again, not doing it in like a heavy-handed way, but does such a great job on like showing a mirror to society. And there are so many eerie and strange parallels between the themes of the Purge films to what we live through on a daily basis in our current society. I think it does a brilliant job of fiction and fantasy, nonfiction, entertainment, and but yet actually has some depth and actually has some commentary and some things to actually say. It strikes that balance, I think, on all fronts. And I think the Purge films are, like, again, I think it's kind of a rare thing because, franchises, good franchises, usually it's a thing of like you have your favorites, obviously, in the franchise. And there are definitely movies that stand out, and movies that are your favorites. But I think Purge is a little bit different because I do think I love all of the films, but I do really think that each film actually just gets better and better as you go. So very, very interesting. And I don't own. I only own two of the Purge movies on Blu-ray. Unfortunately, I do need to get them. I was at Bull Moose this past weekend, and I was looking at it, and I almost bought the set. But the thing that's funny about me, about buying sets or full collections of movies, what I have come across, with the exception of the Friday 13th franchise, like I really love, if I buy a movie, I really want it to come with some special features and, a bunch of really cool information, especially if I love that movie. But I was looking at the Purge box set. They had all of the movies together, and it was for a pretty good price. There's not a whole lot of special features on them. They're basically just the movies themselves. So that's why I hold out. Whereas what I end up doing is I end up like, these are the two movies I have. I have the first Purge on Blu-ray. It's got a bunch of special features on it, and it's really awesome. It's a really beautiful package. This is going to be the movie I'm talking about today. And then the other, a couple weeks ago, I picked Election Year, The Purge. And it's on Blu-ray, of course, and, some really good special features, and it's really good. So I noticed, obviously, it takes a lot longer to come across them, but when I buy each movie individually, then I get more bang for my buck. That's how it was for me. Like one of my favorite directors of all time, Herschel Gordon Lewis. His films are, obviously harder to find, but in the kind of underground exploitation world, he's, very popular. So they sell lots of his movies as a box set, and I've come across that a lot. And the same thing where I've looked at it, but there's no special features. It's just basically just the movies. So what I did with his movies is I bought every one, pretty much all of his movies. But what I've done with that instead is I buy each one individually, and then I get that extra bonus with all the great beautiful special features. So that's what I'm trying to do with the Purge movies. It takes longer to do that, obviously, but I think as a collector and as a fan, it's just it's way better. It's way better. So the first Purge, starring Ethan Hawke. This movie is really awesome. It's a very unique movie, a really innovative movie. It's funny because this movie, I recently rewatched one of my favorite Canadian exploitation movies, and it's called The Siege. Really cool movie. Um, Recently, and I did a review on The Siege a while back. It's one of my favorite exploitation movies. It's a Canadian movie that came out in 1983, and it's basically about, the whole film is based on, well, actually some real accounts, but basically the police department in Canada had basically gone on strike, and for 24 hours there were no police. So there were these riots that started, and people started to kind of lose their minds because the police basically went on strike. And the movie was kind of was based on that. But it's a really great movie, kind of a dystopian, post-apocalyptic kind of a movie. But and and I watched The Siege again pretty recently, and the filmmakers were talking about how they had seen an interview with the makers of the Purge films, and they said that The Siege was a big influence. They said that, yeah, there's this movie called The Siege, that came out in the early '80s. It's like this, low budget Canadian exploitation movie, and that was a big influence, and you can totally see it, and it's really interesting. Um, and the Purge movie, the original, came out in 2013. All of these films were pretty much, and I believe he directed all of the films, but James Demonaco is the director, and he wrote most of these films, as far as I know. Um, and he's great. I think again, it's one of those things of where, yeah, he directed all of the Purge films. And again, it's one of those crazy rare things on how each movie is not only consistent, but I actually think they get better. And this is the movie that started it all. Um, and I think, I've been pretty critical, but I've also praised some of their movies that they've done. But Jason Blumhouse, who is the CEO of Blumhouse Studios, which is one of the biggest movie studios right now, and they primarily do horror films. Like they were responsible for the last Halloween movies that came out. They've done all kinds of movies, but their biggest one And their biggest, probably the biggest director that they ever worked with was Jordan Peele, who directed Get Out, and who I think is one of the best, creative forces in Hollywood today. But they've also done some really crappy movies like Firestarter, the Firestarter remake, and the recent atrocity that was The Exorcist at the beginning, which is just so fucking terrible. It's like, so they have a, it's all over the place. They're not very consistent. But The Purge, I think, is definitely a highlight for Blumhouse. Blumhouse, the other film which I should mention that they did is the remake of The Invisible Man, which is a awesome movie. I've done multiple shows on that movie. Really good. So they have put out some really good films. And I think The Purge, they put out The Purge. They continually they have put out all of the movies, and I definitely think it's the best, definitely the best franchise that they've ever done. And the first one stars Ethan Hawke, Lena Headey, Akeleta Kane, Rise Wakefield, and Max Burkholder. Really, really great film. This movie, and I think again, it was taken. I definitely has an influence from that Canadian movie, which a lot of people have probably never even heard about, The Siege. But the premise of this movie the premise of all of the films is so great. It's basically centered on this kind of dystopian idea that there's a government that, in order to more or less either eradicate crime altogether or bring the numbers so low down, they decide to pass. The government passes this legislation where once a year they create this thing called the Purge, and basically they suspend law and order, and people can go out and basically indulge in any of their dark, murderous desires that they have. Whether they, if they have loved ones, or not real loved ones, but if they have family members, or they have people that they hate, or people that have done or who have wronged them, they can, during this 24-hour period, they can go out and basically kill that person or do whatever they want without facing any kind of punishment. And it lasts for 24 hours. There's no police. There's no their hospitals are closed. Everything. Basically, it's complete and utter lawlessness for 24 hours, and it's such an interesting premise. It's such an interesting premise, and Ethan Hawke is the star of this film, and basically he works for this like security company that is responsible for, during the purge, what you see and what ends up happening is that people put a lot of money and invest in home security so they can protect their houses and protect their families. So Ethan Hawke works for this company that's what they do for business. And it's really great. It's such an awesome premise. And the other thing is, like I said, this movie and this franchise, I think, just really, on one side, being really, really entertaining. They're very dark movies. They're very violent, very gritty. But I also feel they have such a great kind of social commentary on who we are as a people and kind of where we are as a society. When you see some of the imagery in some of these films, the thing is, like, it makes me think of what we've gone through just the last 3 years with the pandemic and the protests, the riots. January 6th is approaching. The invasion of the Capitol. Just surreal things that we've experienced, things that I thought I would never experience in my lifetime or actually see. This film, I mean, the imagery and some of the notions of the story is directly from our headlines, and it's unbelievable. Like, it's unbelievable. There's not, I have to say, even though, like, this is obviously the premise of The Purge is an extreme case, or pushing it obviously into the extreme. The basic framework, or the basic premise, or the basic kind of outline is literally what we have experienced and what we are experiencing. Like there is no difference, and it's really interesting to see that there's like I kind of feel like there's almost this weird pendulum in between both of those realities, and that it could swing either way so easily, so easily. And and I think this film and these films just again they do such a wonderful job at toting that line between entertainment and also having something to really say. Having like I think these films actually have some depth and they're thought provoking. I think they're very thought provoking. So there's not a whole lot of movies that necessarily do that. Especially when it comes to franchises and they're where it can tote that line and say something with some deep meaning or even ramification. Talk about things that have some deep meanings and ramifications, but yet at the same time are total like escapism and totally fun and totally and just great horror films. So yeah, and the Blu-ray that I got for this movie, again, I need to get all of them. The Blu-ray is really awesome for The Purge. This is the first movie in the franchise that started it all, and it's become this really big franchise, and it's my favorite, modern day franchise. The last one just came out, I think, it was 2 years ago, and again, really great, really fresh. Each movie is really fresh, but this is a movie that started it all. This is an awesome movie. I'm gonna watch this again too because it's been a while, but really great. Beautiful transfer of this on Blu-ray. This is gonna be the first of the shows of where I'm gonna do a entire franchise coverage of the Purge. I'm gonna do video each day on each of these movies. So really great. It's funny. I have a couple of friends and people that I know that won't watch these movies because they think that they're like, oh, we're not into like torture porn, and and I get it. I mean, these movies are pretty brutal, and there are elements of that in these movies, but I think they're more than that, and I don't think they're easily. They shouldn't be labeled like that per se, but I get it. I get it. And the other thing I think that's hard for probably some people for them to watch this movie is that it's very close to our reality. It's not so fantasy based that it's like, where you have to suspend your disbelief. You're like, yep, that could happen. Yep. Oh, I've seen that. I've actually seen that when I turn the news on. So, awesome movie. And again, great special features on here. So that's why I'm going to buy each one individually over time. So thanks again. And stay tuned for the next installment of my coverage of the Purge movies. For our founding fathers, have a great day.